Hello, good day, everyone. I hope you still recognize me. It has been quite a tough time the past months, so I decided to put the movies on hold and not do anything except gaining weight and losing hair. But now the lockdown is again in place in Amsterdam. Museums are closed, and we'll have to do with the art that surrounds us now. And I decide today to talk about an artwork that maybe uh, symbolizes or maybe shows the way that we are feeling by now. It's a work by an artist you might recognize. His name is Vincent van Gogh, and this work is called Worn Out. Here it is, a beautiful drawing with aquarelle and a little bit of highlights made by Vincent van Gogh when he was 27 years old and lived in Etten, which is in the province of Brabant, current day Netherlands. He was 27 years old, absolutely untalented, having the drawing skills of a poor little child, not really good at rendering faces and bodies. And he decided to move back to his parents at the age of 27 to Etten to pick up work as an artist. And after 1 year of practicing, this is what he got. Let me tell you the background about this wonderful painting. It's a painting, or a drawing actually, in aquarelle as well, but let's call it a painting because it's so well executed, of a guy that lived in the region of Etten, actually in a place called Het Heike, if you talk the dialect of Brabant, Het Heike. The guy is called Cornelis Schuitenmaker, and he was the only, not the only gay in the village, he was the only Protestant in the village. Remember, Vincent van Gogh's father was a Protestant clergyman who wanted to spread Protestantism in the province of Brabant. So he knew this guy from visits that his father made to Cornelis Schuitenmaker. And he asked Cornelis Schuitenmaker, who by this time was 64 years old. That means he is he's an old guy. The average lifespan in the 19th century when Vincent drew this beautiful drawing was 44 years old. So this guy by then is an old guy. And we know exactly from the letters how that went. Vincent asked Cornelis to pose for him. An old, raggedy guy, something that Vincent loved. He had a Jesus complex, He wanted to draw the suffering and the destitute, the poor, the farmers. So Cornelis Schuitenmaker arrives at the place where he would have his portrait taken, but to the great chagrin of Vincent, like everyone, bit naively, I'm gonna have my portrait made, he arrived in his best Sunday clothes. So Cornelis Schuitenmaker all dressed up, ready to go and have his portrait done by the master, Vincent van Gogh. That's exactly what Vincent didn't want. It was towards the end of 1881. The guy had a crappy life. This guy had a crappy life as well. So he wanted to convey poverty, destitution, misery in this painting of the old guy Cornelis Schuitenmaker. It was a tradition, by the way, in that time, especially with English artists, to draw scenes from everyday life or from farmers, for this matter, and give them a kind of over-the-top title, really dramatic title. And in this case, if you look at the signature here, look at it. What does it say above Vincent? It says "Worn Out." And this is exactly what I am and what this man is as well. Vincent tried to show the misery of life, the poor and the destitute, which he wanted to be a part of. Little did the poor and destitute know that this is a 27-year-old guy going back to live with his parents, having everything sponsored by his parents, and later, of course, famously, his brother Theo. Vincent was not a nice guy, by the way, in that period. This is the year, by the way, that Vincent had a little of a Me Too incident, let's say. Because when Vincent lived in Etten, where he made this wonderful portrait, he was in love with his cousin. His cousin, Kay Vos, who was a widow. Vincent, for some reason, always loved widows. He had a panache for women that were dealt, let's say, a lesser hand in the game of life. He was enamored with Kay and asked her hand to marry his own cousin. Of course, Kay says in Dutch, nee, nee, nooit, which means no, no, never will I marry you, Vincent van Gogh. She goes back home to Amsterdam, where Vincent, borrowing money from his brother Theo, goes to Amsterdam, almost beats in the door of the family Vos to find the family eating dinner, approaching Kay, wanting to violate her. She runs upstairs. Her father wants to keep Vincent at bay, but Vincent puts dramatic guy. He puts his hand in the fire of the stove that is burning in that room and says to the father, I will not take my hands out of the fire before Kay comes downstairs. The father, thank God, blows out the fire and says to Vincent, zeg je nou helemaal gek geworden? Are you crazy? And Vincent leaves Amsterdam to go back after a visit to the prostitute, of course, to Etten, where he really dramatic and over the top, oh, poor me, puts all his effort into this wonderful drawing of Cornelis Schutenmaker, which he projects his feelings to. So it's a strange painting. I mean, look at the upper leg here. It's a bit too long, isn't it? So if that guy stands up, look at the proportions with the chair. That's just not right. But imagine that Vincent for a year was copying images of people sitting or standing from art historical books because no academy wanted the guy. He was crazy as fuck. But this is the true, and I have it in my hands now. It's amazing. It just came back, by the way, from London and from Tokyo. It had a little tour where in the Tate Britain it was exhibited and in a museum in Japan. This is in my hands and on your screen the genesis of Vincent van Gogh as the tragic superstar artist who only a few years later, in 1890, so that's 9 years afterwards, would commit suicide in the most tragic of ways, making totally different paintings. This is how I felt and how most of us must feel, totally worn out after all the coronas, the elections, and etc. So I'm back, I'm tired, but I'll try to keep you up with a little bit more movies before we finally are liberated from this terrible lockdown time. I'm gonna play a little bit more with this, and hopefully I'll come back with a new movie. Ta-da!